We had
I'll
an,
record to the cloud. Recording to the cloud, I believe. Yeah.
I don't think you were supposed to do that.
What, record to the cloud? It's the two choices are the cloud or my computer.
Oh, okay.
Cloud is our
So,
cloud, so it's okay.
Okay. All right. If um okay, we'll get started here.
all right.
I'm Rita Jacobs and I will be moderating, okay, and introducing our speakers and other information. I'm one of the founding members of the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee. Three of our members are going to present information. Howard Switzer is one of them, and he will be talking about why you never learned about money in school, which should be interesting for you. And following that, that will be a short presentation. And following that, we will have our main presentation, which will be made by Sue Peters and Kevin McCormick. Um, and so anyway, we will introduce everybody a little bit later. Well, but we will start with Howard. And Howard is an architect who promotes earth-friendly construction and sovereign money reform. He's a founding member and former co-chair of the Green Party of Tennessee. And he served many terms on the Green Party's National Committee as a delegate and also ran for office in Tennessee 3 times. In 2017, he led a successful defense of our greening the dollar plank in the Green Party platform against an effort made by outside promoters of the modern monetary theory to remove it from our platform. Howard is also a founding board member and former president of the Alliance for Just Money and a member of the American Monetary Institute, currently a co-chair of the GPUS Banking and Monetary Reform Committee. So Howard, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, short talk here. I was thinking that we can all agree that economic inequality is a central problem in this world. And it's largely why the BMRC promotes monetary reform. The difficulty for monetary reformers is that people don't know much about it. For instance, how many of you learned in school that we have a global monetary system that is well over 300 years old? Anyone? No, and many of us don't know the history and science of money because it's not taught in our schools. And that was by design. So I want to take a few minutes to explain with a brief history why that is. In 2014, there was a Princeton study that proved that private money coming from the finance industry, the banks and their corporations, determine our nation's public policy. They invested something like 5.8 billion in the 5 years that they studied, 5.8 billion, and they got back 4.4 trillion. That is a huge over, well over 400, I think around 400% return on investment. So it's very profitable if you've got a lot of money to invest in government, right? To get what you want. Well, if this is because if you have a private for-profit monetary system, the public policy will only favor the interest of those who own the private for-profit system. And the government has to borrow its money from them. Thus, we have a $36 trillion federal debt. Democratic self-governance, however, requires a public money system, issuing all new money exclusively for the common good, public purposes, as its first use. Once government created money is issued or spent into the economy, then it circulates in the private sector. But unlike the current money, it was not issued as interest-bearing debt. And so it's not making its way back to the bank that created it with interest. Instead, money would be issued as a permanently circulating asset that creates wealth and eliminates debt. This is what happened when Lincoln's greenbacks were issued into the economy to fund the nation's defense. Greenbacks quickly created a prosperous cash economy that was eliminating debt, and the bankers hated it. And they did everything they could to end it. And as you know, they took some extreme measures. Because greenbacks distributed wealth and power broadly rather than concentrating it to a few. But Lincoln only managed to issue $450 million before the bankers had him shot, because greenbacks threatened their game of issuing the entire money supply as interest-bearing debt. And after he was killed, for the next 40 years, the progressive people's movements demanded government create more greenbacks to broadly fund new infrastructure, roads, bridges, schools, libraries, hospitals, etc., creating 4 million jobs. It came to a head in the election of 1912 and this was the same year the Pujo Committee investigation revealed that the banks controlled every industry in the nation, and with J.P. Morgan at the center of it. And Congress was convinced that a government central bank was the answer. However, the legislation passed in 1913, along with the income tax, created a central bank that was privately owned to regulate the finance industry they themselves controlled. Congress still doesn't read their legislation much. Anyway, 2 years later, in 1915, those same financiers who lobbied for the central bank and won, they won a mandatory schooling system based on the Prussian model that, along with psychological techniques they learned from Bernays, you know, the father of mass manipulation, psychological manipulation, would provide reliable workers, compliant consumers, and loyal soldiers for the massive expansion they were about to invest in. And that is why the history and science of money is not taught in our schools. The good news is the legislation to replace this system with a public system we should have had a long time ago is already written, vetted, and introduced to Congress in 2011. It's in our platform, and we're here today to teach you about it and why changing the money is vital and revolutionary. And that's my talk, and I'm going to put some links in the chat for people of various documents that might be of interest, plus a film by Richard Werner called Princes of the Yen, which talks about how the central banks are the power in the world driving wars.
Okay, thank you, Howard. I just wanted to mention that if you have questions, we will take questions after the other presentations are made, and you can put your questions in the chat. So, okay. Okay, next on our program, we have Sue Peters and Kevin McCormick, who are both founding members of the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee, as well as Howard. So, and they will be giving a presentation on why monetary reform is highly relevant to party building. And especially one advocating system and cultural change and economic justice at home, in anti-imperialism abroad, all fundamental to the Green Party's platform. The U.S. financial system is dominated by Wall Street and the Federal Reserve and corporate monopolies. Just as Occupy Wall Street woke up the public to the true issue of the 1% and its concentration of wealth and power, monetary reform can be used by our candidates to wake up the electorate to the need to unite against the current system that vastly enriches the 1%. And this can draw people away from both major parties into the Green Party. So I will start by introducing our first presenter, who is Sue Peters. And I'll mention her camera doesn't work, so you won't be able to see her while she makes her presentation. Sue was an information technologist specializing in finance. And she spent 35 years on Wall Street and has an insider's knowledge of the relationship between Wall Street and money. She gave a public in-depth class on the book called The Lost Science of Money by Stephen Zarlenga, and has extensive class materials for that can be viewed from the history tab on the website of greensformonetaryreform.org. Or for shortcut, you can also reach it through greens.money. And I'm hoping one of our members will put the links in the chat for us. Sue was given a scholarship in 2019 by the American Monetary Institute to do some original research and write a paper, and she chose as a topic to research the U.S. financiers and the Federal Reserve System and how they funded World War I. And she is, as I mentioned, also a founding member of the Green Party Banking and Monetary Reform Committee. And she will be presenting along with Kevin McCormick, who's also one of our founding members. Kevin was born in Peoria, Illinois in 1955. He's a member of the Green Party of Texas, has a law degree from the University of Houston. He was the Green Party candidate for U.S. Congress 24th District in Dallas, Texas in 2016, and was a high school math teacher. And he presently resides in East Texas. And as I mentioned, he's also one of our founding members. So I will have them go ahead and start. Sue, if you want to share screen, you can start the presentation.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks everybody for being here. Let me share my screen. And put it into slide mode. Okay, this is the title of our presentation, Party Building with Monetary Reform. Okay, hold on one second. Just move this down. I can. Or over. Oh, well. Okay. What is monetary reform? These are the three parts of our presentation. What is it? Why is it important for you, the candidates? And how does it help the Green Party? Okay, this is my part. What is monetary reform? We have in the Green Party the Green New Deal, but we have to get it funded. We have to have a source of money, public money for it. And greening the dollar, the monetary reform platform in our platform, the plank in our platform, is the new big idea to advance your candidacy. It's an idea whose time has come because it's an idea that we can pay for the Green New Deal, as well as helping our entire nation and the people in it. Okay. So it can be funded. Where do you go to find, after this presentation, where do you go to find the information? I mean, you're always absolutely welcome to call me or email me or whatever. I'd love to talk to you with your questions after the presentation. But you can go to our plank in the part 4 of economic justice and sustainability, and it's number N, and it's called Greening the Dollar. And this is a quote from it. Only with a public money system can the government direct our national wealth to the needs of the people through their local and state governments. Yes, a lot of this money is going to be given to local and state governments for the needs at that level. And we also have our website, greensformonetaryreform.org. This explains monetary reform, what it is, how it can be changed, and the means of changing it. And that's a quote from our website. Stephen Zarlenga was the director of the American Monetary Institute, and he originally worked with 2 Greens back in 2008, 9, and 10. And they identified, they recognized right away that it's a system change that would be absolutely necessary for our country, and that it fit into the Green Party because it was a system change. And this is very important. Stephen always said this. Over time, whoever controls the money system controls the nation. The money flows are where the money power is. And today in the world we live in, you can't really do anything without money. Your family needs money. You earn it and you spend it. But you need enough money to support your family. Same for businesses. It's this thing that floats around. You don't really see it, but it's there all the time. And it controls the nation and its economy. Very important to keep in your head. So I'm going to try to explain the current system, okay? I call it the current medium of exchange because it ain't money. It's not what we think money is. It's debt. I mean, that sounds wild, right? But it is based on all on debt. And who creates that debt? The banks, private banks. It's privately controlled. And this is the core of it. And I'll give you an example. Our medium of exchange is created by private commercial banks as bank credit. That's what it really is. And how does it get created? By these private corporations called banks. Every time an individual, a corporation, a government walks in, representative walks into the bank, and this is every bank, right? And asks for a loan. They sit down with the bank officer. The bank officer talks to them and says, okay, we'll give you the loan, okay? The 2 of them, the bank and the borrower, sign a loan contract. And then the next step is very legal, but very secret to the American populace. The next step is the bank just types in the principal of the loan into the borrower's bank account. It creates it as an entry in the account. The beginning of our country, these banks would do it by writing it into the account, right? Now we have computers. So the computer, they type it in. And suddenly there's more money in the world. But just remember, all of our money is based on this. So when people can't pay their loans, that money goes away. It disappears. right? Or think of this, the power the bank has. The bank decides who they're going to give loans to. They're not forced to give loans. They decide. And when I first learned that, I looked around the world that I lived in and I said, who are they deciding to give loans to? Number one, weapons manufacturers, corporations, multinational corporations that are taking our jobs out of our country. Financial powers, financial companies that are using these loans from the banks to generate more and more bonds and debt. And I said, my goodness, as Howard said, we were never taught this. Why? Because they don't want us to know, the American public. So the future medium, the one that's in our platform, is real money. We call it sovereign money or public money. It's real money. It doesn't come from any private bank that's making profit off of the loans that they make and create the money that way. That's all profit driven. No, this is driven by needing and wanting to help the citizens of this country. And who creates it? Congress. And that's in the Constitution. Constitutionally, Congress creates the money. And again, it's sovereign money or public money. It's not debt. It doesn't go away. It gets spent by the federal government. Some of it's given to the states and the local governments, and they decide what the needs of their citizens are at that level of government, and it circulates. So it's also a stable money supply. The private bank issuance of their debt credit, that issuance is totally unstable. And you can see it in our world and throughout our history, right? What are we going through now? We have an inflation. Well, why do we have an inflation? Because the banks are giving more and more money and they're creating more and more money. And therefore, the price of all the goods and services that are in our communities that we all need to buy are going up, up, up. And they do the same thing. They can decide not to give loans. A good example in history was the Great Depression of the 1930s. Okay? There was no money. People would say there's no money. Well, there was no money because the banks were not giving loans. They were failing, going out of business. And the Federal Reserve, that are supposed to help their member banks, didn't do anything. So, but this sovereign money gives a stable money supply. And remember, it's an asset. It's not a debt. It's an asset to the people. And it's spent for all the citizens for the common good. There's an option in the platform and the hope that the Congress will be able, using sovereign money, to pay off the federal debt as it becomes due. So it'll come due and they'll create the money and they'll pay it off. So there'll be more money in the economy to generate more business, to generate helping people more, whatever the Congress and the people decide. And this is my last slide. And these are the 3 actions. Now, what's to remember about this is that all 3 must be done together in whatever legislation is passed by Congress. It has to be done together. If you leave one of these powers out, the money power, there's so they know so well how to manipulate the systems, you know, that if you leave one of these out, it'll slowly over time get back to what we have today, which we don't want. So the first one is Congress has the only power, the sole power to create and issue money. And it's all new money is debt-free and spent into circulation for public purpose. Number two, nationalize the Federal Reserve System into a bureau in the Treasury Department. Right now, the Federal Reserve System is privately owned. And I can send you information about that if you want to see the details. And number three, banks are prohibited from creating deposits to fund loans. They can't do that ever again. And banks will only be able to lend already existing money. Say they have some accounts there that people have in the bank that they gave the bank as investment accounts to make some interest. That money will be loaned out. It's not new money. Okay. So thank you very much for listening, and please contact me if you have any questions after the whole meeting. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is Kevin McCormick here, and I guess it's my turn. I will try to go a little more quickly. Let me put the share on here. And yeah, we have all these slides, so okay. And Zoom always gets in the way. All right. I hope everyone can see that. Why is monetary reform important for a Green Party candidate? Okay, well, this is a little redundant of what people have said already, but the Federal Reserve System fails to serve human needs. Private control over the monetary system. The Federal Reserve serves Wall Street banks, not the public. Concentration of wealth. Wealth is systematically transferred from the lower classes to financial elites. High costs. Continuous inflation drives expensive housing, food costs, and transportation. Debt slavery. Millions are trapped by student debt, medical debt, credit card debt, mortgage debt, and auto debt. And the banking cartel agenda. With few exceptions, money is available only for things that support regular payments and serve as collateral. So that's okay. Well, I think other people talked about that some, and we can come back to that with questions. The banking cartel agenda is a very important point that our whole economy and basically our whole country is structured around maximizing profits for banks and Wall Street corporations. Okay. All right. Now, this quote here from Alexander Hamilton, he was one of the founders of the U.S. and this little Zoom thing. Okay. Anyway. All right. Every loan which a bank makes is a credit given to the borrower on its books. The borrower frequently, by a check or order, transfers his credit to some other person who can either convert it into cash or pass it to some other hand. And in this manner, the credit keeps circulating, performing in every stage the office of money. So this is one of the things that the bankers figured out from a long time ago, back in the days of Venice and the Dutch exchange, the Bank of England, that their bank drafts would circulate as money. So, but they're not money, they're credit. So they're just like money. That's one of the main reasons the banking cartel can have as much power as it does, is that it acts just like money. So people are fooled into believing that it's money, but it's bank credit. Okay. the more profound, and then we have Frederick Soddy, who was a reformer from the 1930s. He was a great scientist, and then he wrote a book on, or a couple of books on money. And he says, the more profound students of money have realized the enormous significance of this money power. To allow it to become a source of revenue to private issuers is to create first a secret and illicit arm of the government, and last a rival power strong enough ultimately to overthrow all other forms of government. So if you suspect that we live in a corporate authoritarian fascist, society, well, that's because the banking cartel pretty much controls everything, and they have built up their power to be really very complete. Okay, so in this chart, we see the breakdown of wealth in America. Now, this chart is a little confused. Well, because what you have, it's a little confusing because you have the wealth share on the outside and the percentage of the population on the inside. So starting at the top, if you can see it, 50%, that's 50% of the public, owns 2.5% of the wealth. 40% of the public, what we would consider the middle class, own 30.8% of the wealth. And then the top 10%, 9%, I don't have that broken down, but the top 10% own 66.7% of the wealth. So 2/3 of the wealth is owned by the top 10%. This is a graphic example of how the Federal Reserve System shifts wealth up the hierarchy. Okay, so wealth and power are concentrated when credit is used as money. All right, so yeah, half of us own the little green slice of wealth, that little tiny green part there, and that's half of the wealth. I mean, half the population owning 2.5% of the wealth. Now we also have the constant increase in debt under the Federal Reserve System. So this curve is tracing the total debt. This is all sectors debt, in government, private, and everything that they put together on FRED, which is the Federal Reserve Economic Data. It's published by the St. Louis branch of the Federal Reserve. And this is one of the charts you can get. There's a lot of charts, but this is one, and it shows this curve. And if you have studied any math, you would recognize an exponential curve, and it rises by 7.9% annually. And I don't have it in the slideshow, but I have researched and found that the money supply, the deposits, grow by 6.7 or so percent. So in other words, debt grows maybe 1% more than the money to pay it. So our debt becomes increasingly unpayable, and it's exponential. So it has a doubling time. In other words, it grows faster, the amounts grow higher, and the rate becomes faster. So it just is a total acceleration. So we have 102 trillion of debt, as of January 1, 2024. The banking cartel debt money system requires constant expansion. The worsening environmental crisis shows the impossibility of infinite growth on a finite planet. But that does not stop the banking cartel or the Federal Reserve System. They have to grow because that's the nature of a debt money system, that it must expand or it contracts, because if it starts to contract, then people cannot pay their debts. And if you can't pay your debt, then the next person in the chain cannot pay their debt, and the next person cannot pay theirs, and goes on like that, and then it kind of collapses. So it's this whole balloon of inflated bank deposits and debt, and if anything happens to stop it from expanding, then it contracts. So they prevent that, and so this is the requirement for growth. Okay. Why candidates need monetary reform? Well, it makes it possible to fund social and environmental needs. If you have public money, then the money can be allocated according to social and human benefits. It doesn't have to be allocated according to the ability to pay back a loan. Of course, you don't want to make foolish or whimsical expenditures, But there are many, many things that would help a lot and improve our society if they were funded. And so this is something for Green Party candidates to be able to pay for their programs. It challenges the root of corporate control of government. So criticizing the Federal Reserve and attacking the monetary system that we have now, demanding reform, is a very effective way of criticizing the establishment. It removes the need for constant growth and resource wars, which are intrinsic to the banking cartel. Monetary reform bridges partisan divisions. Many people from different persuasions are upset with the Federal Reserve and agree that the Federal Reserve is not helpful. How does monetary reform help the Green Party? Greening the dollar provides a proven financial strategy to implement the Green New Deal. To create a sustainable economy and a hopeful future, we must replace the Federal Reserve System with a public money system. People over profit, 100% renewable energy, and just transition. Now, these things came directly from the Green Party page on the Green New Deal. And we're trying to answer the question of how do you pay for all this? How do you do it? With public money. That's how you do it. Okay, the money power makes it possible to fund our dreams. So monetary sovereignty is the power of the federal government to control the issuance and supply of money, a power which it has in the Constitution, but it does not exercise. With the status quo of bank control of the money system, these dreams are not really possible. And these are a list of things that we noted in the Green Party platform, kind of representative examples, but not necessarily limited to this, or whatever your focus is. But affordable housing, Medicare for all, free education, environmental health, public transportation, universal basic income, and most importantly, economic security. Because economic insecurity is one of the main ways that this system is maintained. Nobody can take their eye off the ball long enough to figure anything out. You cannot take enough time off work to make any progress on any social issues or anything in your life. So that's because of economic insecurity. And it's very well choreographed to make sure that you have almost enough money. Never more than enough, unless you're in the top 10%, but almost enough. Or maybe way less than enough if you're in the bottom 20 or 30%. Okay, opportunities for Green Party leadership. Bipartisan anger. Occupy Wall Street, if you remember that, the demonstrations in Zyker Park, I think it is in New York, which eventually were disbanded by the police. It showed widespread anger at the Federal Reserve and big banks. Ever-growing crises, the ecological crisis, forever wars, rising prices, and the heavy weight of debt require Green Party leadership for system change. Monetary reform is the elephant in the room. For the Green Party, monetary reform is a natural sequel to and the way to fund our Green New Deal. And I want to add to that last point, I follow a lot of financial discussions on the internet and, economic reports and things like that. And I am hearing more and more people getting closer and closer to the recognition that public money is a necessity. As they start talking about the impossibility of the federal debt, how do you revive the economy? How can the United States compete in the world? How can the empire be maintained? Well, we don't want to maintain the empire, but that's one of the issues that they talk about. And they're getting closer and closer to this. But the Green Party needs to take the initiative here and crystallize this demand for a public money system to replace the Federal Reserve with a public money system. That would be taking the leadership on a growing idea. And I think it would be very important. Okay, monetary reform answers the question of how are you going to pay for it? With unions, farmers groups, and social justice groups, we can link monetary reform to the goals of these groups. They have agendas that they would like to accomplish. They have programs that they want to implement, but like they can't do it because they're trapped in debt. They have no time. They have no money. But if you have a worthy enough objective here, the government with public money could put some funding in there and accomplish things. So this would be a way for Green Party candidates to appeal that the Green Party wants the public money system, and with that system, the government could actually help you instead of being your enemy. Monetary reform creates the means for funding economic justice, anti-austerity, and environmental sustainability. Okay, next. Agitation and outreach. Inspire new voters. With monetary reform, the Green Party can reactivate the energy of Occupy Wall Street by targeting the Fed, the Federal Reserve. Media campaigns to expose how people and planet are exploited to enrich and strengthen the billionaire brothers. Bring back the greenback can become an effective campaign slogan. I don't know if that can actually be. It sounds good to us in the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee, but I don't know how well that would fly in real life. But, we have about 40 or 50%, maybe 60% participation in the elections. And this bottom 50% of the population, they don't vote. And why not? Because the system doesn't offer them anything. They're the exploited people. They're not the ones who are making money or prospering off of this system. So if they have the Green Party saying, okay, we're going to do monetary reform, we're going to turn the tables, we're going to change this so that you get resources, we might be able to bring a lot of new people to vote, and young people in particular. But I mean, it's just something that it's an issue that many people understand, or they don't necessarily understand it in depth, but they know that something should be done. And so who's saying that they're going to do something? Well, nobody right now, but the Green Party should be the one saying that. Monetary reform delivers the goods. Education and communication. Ensure that party members know that monetary reform returns power from the banks to representative government. Focus on the tangible. Monetary reform can enable affordable housing and health care. It calls out corruption and relieves debt. Okay, lessons from U.S. history. We've mentioned the NEED Act. That's HR 2990 from the from the 2011 session of the House of Representatives, proposed by Dennis Kucinich, a famous Democrat who was gerrymandered right after he introduced that bill. Surprise. Okay, so that's the most recent noteworthy effort here. Then you had the Chicago Plan in 1936, and that was a response to the Great Depression. This is a picture of Irving Fisher, and he proposed a system very similar to what we're talking about, where the banks were not permitted to create money. They had to have 100% reserve lending, and the government would create money, and this would alleviate the Great Depression. And then we've also mentioned Abraham Lincoln, and the gentleman on the right in this picture, I think his name is Roberts. I'm sorry, I knew it at one time, but I've now forgotten. But he was an activist back in the 1860s. They had them then too, and he helped the formulation of the greenbacks. Okay, and
Is that Henry Clay?
No, it's not. I don't think that's who it is, Howard.
Henry Carey.
Henry Carey. Okay, Henry Carey. Carey. It's a little detail that doesn't come up, but in the northern states with the greenback, the wartime inflation was about 100%. In other words, prices basically doubled. But then they came back. Now, during that time, the banks also issued a lot new deposits too. So who caused the inflation is open for debate. But in the Confederate States, in the South, they did not use public money. They used debt money, and their money inflated to worthlessness. It inflated by 1,000 times. So a Confederate dollar was, you had to have 100 Confederate dollars to be worth 1 penny. I think that was about what it was like. So the monetary system, was extremely important in that. And then back to the days of the colonies, Benjamin Franklin, and he says this about Pennsylvania scrip and the colonial money, which the colonies often issued their own money. Okay, in the colonies, we issue our own money. We issue it in proper proportion to the demands of trade and industry to make the products pass easily from the producers to the consumers, and we have no interest to pay. So Benjamin Franklin is talking about the relative prosperity in the colonies, which was basically true. The colonies were more prosperous than England. But when the English figured this out, they banned continental currencies. They banned the colonial currencies, and said that they could only use notes from the Bank of England or gold or silver, and that pretty much messed up the economy in the colonies and led to a lot of poverty and unrest, and was one of the reasons that we had the American Revolution. Okay, and this next slide is just says the same things as the last one. So colonial America thrived on publicly issued money, which funded the American Revolution. And yes, the continental currency, you might have heard that it was, the phrase "not worth a continental." But what the British did in fighting against the Americans in the American Revolution was they printed up millions, literally millions of continental currency notes. They were all counterfeit, but they looked good enough, and they were able to circulate them, and that's one of the ways they destroyed the currency for the first American government there. But it wasn't fast enough, so they were able to successfully manage the revolution, especially with help from France and stuff. Okay, and then Lincoln's greenbacks, avoiding public and private debt, the Chicago Plan of the 1930s, proposed to end the Depression, banning banks from creating money, and rather government issuing debt-free money. And then our latest iteration, the Need Act of 2011, is based on historical experience. And the Need Act was carefully researched by the American Monetary Institute, and they went through, because of Dennis Kucinich, they were able to go and have support from congressional staff. A lot of legal research was back behind it. And so it could be passed today, and it would just drop in place and wouldn't cause any kind of legal issues. Okay, it's perfectly legally sound. It might cause some issues for the investor class or the banking cartel, but okay. Monetary reform can appeal to conservatives who want stability and peace, progressives who want social justice and peace, working families who want debt relief and economic stability, and environmentalists who want to protect the ecosphere. These are just some examples, of course. Okay, one of the things about talking about monetary reform is that it reaches across, it's a big idea issue, and it's not necessary for candidates to go into details on this, simply to know that a public money system would be superior to the Federal Reserve private money system. So that way you don't get bogged down in details of people quibbling and arguing about everything. Okay, people who identify as conservatives seek a return to the principles of the Constitution. And our Constitution specifically says the Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and a foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. Okay, then we have progressives who want social justice and equity, and public money makes this possible. Working families want relief from inflation and exploitation. Public money provides resources and stability. Young people need relief from student debt. public money can fund education. Environmentalists seek to restore the earth and to create a sustainable economy, and public money is for social benefit. Okay, so here's some advocacy slides. This picture shows this man cleaning up after the presidential inauguration event for Donald Trump, one of these events. So here's this poor homeless guy. He gets to clean up the litter. So we have our cartoon here that says, what are we, system failure, which this picture represents. What are we waiting for? End the Fed, pass the NEED Act, greens.money, which is a link to our website here for the BMRC. Then we have China moving further and further ahead of the United States, the US falling behind, system failure, and the Fed passed the NEED Act. What are we waiting for? The national debt, hopeless debt, another system failure. What are we waiting for? And the Fed passed the NEED Act. Global warming. It gets hotter and hotter, and this will continue and it is, again, the Federal Reserve System creates this requirement of growth. It creates the need for burning and consuming fossil fuels because there's a lot of money. You know, you get renewable energy, they can't charge you for sunlight, they can't charge you for the wind. And so that reduces their money, and then, you know, they get a lot of, and then you have the whole manufacturing, the automobiles and all that. But it's the constant growth that's required by the Federal Reserve that seems to make it where it's impossible for us to address anything to deal with climate change. So this is definitely a system failure. End the Fed, pass the NEED Act. And in conclusion, monetary reform provides economic credibility. It is our political lever for party building and unseating Wall Street. Linking financial struggles to systemic change, we can attract disillusioned voters, mobilize activists, and offer a workable alternative to neoliberal policies. Realign our nation with its Constitution. Again, Congress has power to coin money and regulate the value thereof if they would only use that power, right? We, the people, according to the Constitution, are the sovereigns of this nation. It is our responsibility to set things right. Okay, well, that's what I have here, and I really appreciate everyone listening. And so I think now I'm going to turn it back over to Rita. I'm going to stop this share. Okay. And thank you for those nice responses. I appreciate that.
Yeah, very good, Kevin.
Thank you very much, both Sue and Kevin.
Yeah.
We have about 15 or 20 minutes left where we can entertain any questions that anyone has. I've been watching the chat, and I haven't seen too many questions there. Someone who joined us late had asked about whether the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee would support a stimulus program for reparations for Black persons. And my answer is yes. If we can reform the economy, we could do that. And yes, we do support reparations. However, with the national debt at $37 trillion, I mean, that could not happen today. So I don't know. Okay, Adam, you can go ahead and answer or ask your question.
I was going to say a couple things. When I was younger, I do remember that I was told that at one point our money was off of the gold system, but at one point we're no longer with the gold system anymore, which obviously, you know, there's really, to be honest with you, there's no value to the money that we have. And when it comes to someone who's disabled, like myself on a low fixed income, it's really difficult to be able to actually, uh, be able to pay for things because you're limited, and there's so many other barriers, such as you're not allowed to save money without being punished for it. And personally, in the past, even when I was younger, I once remembered thinking to myself, it'd be nice to have a money system instead of it being someone has, like you explained earlier, that you basically have to you have to go get a loan, and then that's another, if you get a loan for $2,000, well, that $2,000 is new money that's just been written into existence. So there's no value behind it. But if there's a way of creating a system that when you save money, then the United States government or the Federal Reserve is allowed to create or print money, print some kind of a value, if you know what I'm saying. Over.
Okay, well, Adam, let me take that question. The first thing about money is to recognize that money is a creation of the human mind. No money has any value unless a sufficient number of people acknowledge that value. And it's kind of a cultural thing. So now the banks have a payment system. So you write a check and your person takes it to their bank. They give you money or credit your account. Then they take that check to the other bank. The other bank transfers funds back and forth and all that. So they've got this elaborate system of keeping these accounts. So this is the value of the money. And it's just how much, how is it distributed, things like that. Because it's a social device, it's a social structure. So even like gold, for example, people love to think that gold is some kind of intrinsic value or wonderful stuff. Well, gold is valuable, and it's valuable because other people value it, and they will accept it as something to make payments or settle debts or whatever. But they will do the same thing with Federal Reserve notes or German marks or Russian rubles or Chinese yuan or whatever. So, even now they're talking about stable coins and Bitcoins and stuff like that. So the question about saving and being able to have enough is really a question of how is it allocated. Okay. So in other words, a person should be able to have a sufficient income in order to survive or in order to live at some modest level. And in the Federal Reserve System, the emphasis is on people who can make payments on debt. And if you can't make your payments, then there's kind of like, well, we don't really have any use for you. So then you get kind of pushed aside, and they want to minimize resources going to people who can't pay debts because that's not profitable for them at all. So I hope that answers your question, that a system, it really involves a complicated, well, it involves the social organization, and it involves people in this system, a society-wide system, and it's a political issue from the very beginning. That's it, all the way through to the end. It's a political issue. How is this allocated? Who is entitled to money? Why would we give money? What are we hoping to accomplish? All of those things come into play. So that's basically, I think the answer to your question is anyway, hopefully. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Clyde, you have your hand up.
Yeah, good to see you here, Clyde.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Cool. Greetings to everyone. And hi, Rita, representing Green Party of Michigan. Listen, I get it too. This is basic, Econ 101. We know currency is a medium of exchange, blah, 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 and all of that stuff. I learned this. Just by the way, I wrote a book for the Black community called Afrocentric Economics 101 that talks about a lot of this stuff too. And it's nice to hear some different theories. And maybe Rita, I remember we had a conversation. I might have been briefly last year at our state convention when we were eating, and I was bringing up this conversation, and some folks were, talking about it back and forth. But the reason why I want to bring this up to the banking committee, because I think going forward, this is going to be a deeper conversation that this committee may have to take up in relationship to the reparations question. There's a great video out on YouTube by a professor that I'm going to recommend my fellow Greens watch. It's by a guy named Professor Blacktruth. And the title of the video is called Reparations, Who Owes Us and Why. And in his first segment of a three-part segment, he details how Wall Street is the biggest criminal in the whole process. The modern day banking and insurance industry in America, as we know it, that even developed into Europe, is based off of them financing the agricultural, textile, and railroad industries in the antebellum South during the Civil War. And he very detailed in a professorial way highlights that. So I would please recommend if you all watch that. As it relates to, the retort to the comment, could we do that now? In fact, of America having a $37 trillion deficit, that would not be a problem. Say, for example, if a sin tax was imposed on Wall Street, a $250 transaction tax on corporations, a $25 tax on individuals. Over an 8-year period, that taxation rate could easily generate about 15 to $20 trillion in tax revenue.
Clyde,
That then could be put in.
can I interrupt you
Pardon?
just a second? Okay, we're talking about changing the system, and you are
Yeah,
now
I
talking
understand.
about taxes.
Yeah,
Continue
but
with the system and how it could be justified, your reparations.
that would
I'm not
be
disagreeing with the
reform to the
reparations.
system. If I may continue my point, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
And thank you. And then you can retort back. This is a conversation. Okay. Thank you. That then could go into the whole part of the reform system, because believe me, reparations is a part of of reforming the system, whether you or this panel members and people here would agree with that or not. If I'm the only voice saying it, it does. Because you have to go back to reform this whole system. You have to go to the base of it. This whole system is based off of chattel slavery, sir. That's my point. So in order to go back to reform it, you have to go back to the root of how it was even created in the first place. That's my whole premise that I'm sharing with you. Maybe that went over your head or it did not. I'm highlighting that to you. And this is why I'm making the case to you from an intellectual standpoint that has to be a base of it. You have to go to the root of something, like you say, you want to reform it. How was it created even in the first place? Go back to the Lehman Brothers, go back to the folks, Thomas Willing and his gang on Wall Street. This was going on before America was even founded in 1776. Okay. So I know what I'm talking about, sir. I'm not just talking about something like, coming here as a angry black nationalist wanting to, say this stuff. So I think you could, if you humble yourself a little bit, I think you could really learn a lot by what I'm saying. Okay. But I'm done. Thank you. Now you can,
Okay.
report
All
back.
right, well, thank you, Clyde. Yeah,
Thank you,
let me just
Clyde.
say,
To
let me just say
respond to
in
that.
response here, first of all, I am not trying to argue about the reparations issue. I'm just trying to focus on one simple point, that you have this issue. And what I would like for the Green Party members and people involved in the Green Party to do is to include the idea that we must reform the monetary system when they expound on their ideas. You see, and so my point that I was trying to make here is not any kind of criticism about the reparations concept or any dispute about how it was built and all that. I'm pretty well aware that Black Americans built at least the South and most of a lot of things in the United States, and were not paid or not compensated at all for it, or way less than they deserve. But my point is, include and the Fed, reform the monetary system in your discussion on the issues. That's what I'm trying to ask people to do. because what monetary reform is this background issue. Okay. And it does not come to the forefront unless people bring it up as one point in their thing. And it doesn't have to be a big elaborate point. It just has to be mentioned that, yes, here's this system and it's based on this, it created this, we need to reform this system, and we could also do these other things. But anyway, that's my point. We are trying to get Green Party advocates and Green Party activists to include as one of their talking points, end the Fed, replace it with public money, and just say it. Not, that's we got to kind of get this idea out where more and more people hear it. That's what we're after here today. Okay.
I understand. Okay, if I could just add one little caveat to that, I'm in agreement with everything you're saying in that respect. And by the way, sir, it wasn't just the South. New York and Delaware, which is the states that sided with the antebellum South during the Civil War, because those two states were the states that created the modern day banking and insurance industries in this country called the United States. That's why I was sharing that with you. It's a part of it. And again, if you want to go back to reform of the things that you're talking about, you have to go back to the root of why and how and why it was created in the first place. And the why it was created was because of the buying and selling of Black bodies, and then insuring and banking them and using them to make instruments to build up the early infrastructure of the economy of this country is what it was based off of. You can't get away from that. And I know some may or may not want to do that, but it's a fact. It's not a emotional, opinion. It's a fact. And that's all my point is. Thank you all for hearing me out, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for participating.
racism actually began. It was an economic issue that the white slaves that Europe was dealing with were a bit rowdy and difficult to handle, and they discovered that they could go and impose slavery on Black people, and so that back in the 1400s that began. And of course, that's also the time when this monetary system began to form as well, where all the money was issued as debt, and the bankers were able to take control of all the monarchies because they controlled their money. And that's the problem we have today, is that money controls our public policy, and it's money by profit motivated people. And so we very much support reparations, because a public money system would be able to pay for that and be able to make it right, which is part of the mission of a public money system, which would be to right all of the economic wrongs that have happened.
Okay. Clyde, somebody requested in the chat that you put a link in the chat for the video that you were explaining.
I'll try. I'm not good with putting the links. I'll just type the name
Well,
of the
why
guy.
don't you
Maybe.
type the name of, at least type the
Yeah.
name of the video so people
Okay.
can find it, okay?
Yes, sir. I'll do that. Thanks, Rita. I appreciate you. Thank you. I'll do that.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're
you all.
welcome. You're welcome. But
Okay.
don't call me sir, okay?
That's the slip here. I'm getting old here. I apologize, my dear. I owe you lunch for that at our next state
I'm
meeting.
old too. Yeah, I know that you
I
worked.
know.
I know that you missed the first part of this presentation.
I did. I
And
apologize.
would you like us to give, I don't know, would it be beneficial if we were to give a presentation to the Black Caucus?
That's something I'd have to run by the group. I know they're meeting tonight, but I think, like, these committees and caucuses are going to have to interact on some of these issues. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad I have a chance to participate now with the national committee, so we can, express some of these ideas and thoughts, because, they get missed a lot of times in the marketplace of ideas, I think.
Well,
because,
we're available to give presentations to any group that would like to have us do that,
I'll tell you what, I'm going to meet with them tonight. I'll let the chairs know because I'm not in an official chair position, so I would have to present it to the group. But by all
Right,
means,
understand.
I think that's something that should happen. I very much am in favor of that. So yes, I think we will make that happen.
Okay.
We
Okay.
would
All
love
right.
to do that.
Well, they can
Yep.
contact us, so.
Yeah, I'll get Felina and Khalid and those folks to to chime in with you. But I'm gonna type this in and I'm gonna be quiet and let you guys finish this great presentation because it is some awesome ideas and I appreciate you all just as Greens. Period. Do know that, okay? And I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you. All right, I'm
Yeah.
typing
Appreciate
now.
you too, Clyde.
So
All
we
right,
have a
thank you.
few minutes left here. And I see, is it, let me, Alvandenberg? Has a
Hello.
question. Yeah,
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on Clyde's comment that bringing the issue of reparations into the conversation of monetary reform will, in fact, mobilize and organize workers who, by and large, are Black and Brown people. So it is worth integrating those two conversations together in order to mo- um, uh, spread the message, basically.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a system that concentrates wealth to the few right now, and what we propose is a system that would distribute wealth and power broadly throughout society.
By spending on necessary public
Right. Right.
projects.
Public purpose, common goods.
Let me emphasize again that I'm asking people to somehow incorporate a bullet point or a talking point or one sentence that says, yeah, my issue is really important and it would really help if we got rid of the Federal Reserve and had a public money system. And then move on, continue with whatever your issue is. But I mean, I think it's real important to get, just this whole idea out. Anyway,
Yeah,
over.
it needs to be part of anybody's campaign when they're running for office, to bring up the money problem.
That's true. We don't have to bring it up only in the context of Green organizing to recruit new members. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
other questions? We got maybe, I guess about 5 minutes left here if somebody has a question. Howard, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say something if no one had a question. I was just thinking about how this system concentrates wealth, and it does so in various ways. And one of the things that I learned not too long ago from research by another architect, actually in Germany, was that when you have a money system that issues the money as interest-bearing debt, it means that the prices we pay for everything, and this research was done, on average is 50% of it is capital cost, that is interest going back to the banks. So eliminating a debt system is going to lower our prices right away.
Yeah.
I mean, over time, actually, because it'll,
Mhm.
as the debt gets paid off, then the prices can come down because they don't have that interest to pay, because you see, interest has to come from another loan. They don't, when they create a loan, they just create the principal of the loan, not the interest, but you're charged the interest. So where does that come from? That has to come from another loan. And that's why when the system will crash, when there's too many loan payments or and there's not enough loans being created, the system will crash.
Or when the government's national debt is so big that it can't pay any
Yeah, or when the banks just
Expenses.
decide to stop lending.
Yeah, or the bank
They can
stop
crash the
lending.
economy.
Yes,
And then what they can do
yeah.
is we'll have all these loan defaults, right? And the collateral is picked up for pennies on the dollar by the people with the money, which like the shareholders of the banks. So it concentrates wealth in several ways, and it really needs to be done away with because it is criminal.
I see that Charles is here, who I think is our liaison to the national, to the, what do you call it?
Charles,
Hello.
Yeah,
hello.
you're our liaison, aren't you, to the
Yes,
steering committee? Okay. Glad to have you here. You're welcome to come to any of our meetings too, you know.
thank you. I will do that sometime.
Okay, good. Any other comments, questions? Good. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming.
Oh, I
Yes,
just had-
Alan.
Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead, Alan.
Yeah, Clyde, did you mean Professor Blacktree?
Truth.
Oh, Black Truth is his name?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought you said Blacktree. Okay, great.
Yeah, I found it on YouTube while I just copied what Clyde put in the chat, and there it is on YouTube, 4-part series. Looks very interesting.
It's
And-
very, I guarantee you, your understanding of, well, he doesn't go into the banking portion of it, but you'll understand the nuances of the chattel slavery aspect of it tenfold. It'll increase and it'll edify you big time. So, but thank you all for listening to me for that. I appreciate it. So
Yeah. I wanted to say one more thing though before we wrap this up, and that is that this federal debt has been growing faster than anything else in our system. You know, the deposits grow at 6.5%, 7%. The public debt or the total debt grows at, 8 or 9, whatever it was, 7.8% or something. But the federal debt grows around 8 or 9%. So it grows faster than any other debt. And what's happened now, it's exceeded the GNP or the GDP, and the federal debt is growing faster than the other monetary aggregates, the other money things. And it's going to just completely take over. What they're going to do, and they did a variety of things to increase the federal debt, believe it or not. The Federal Reserve stopped remitting interest to the Treasury, and they've raised interest rates and things like that. So this is a power grab by the banking cartel and the corporations, and it's kind of Trump and all that. It all kind of fits together in the sense of company town America. We lost to China, we're losing to Russia. The world is turning against American imperialism and kicking the military out of Africa, and South America is fighting back and stuff like that. So we're going to create company town America. We don't have anybody around the world to exploit anymore. So we've got these poor Americans who have no idea what's going on. So we can really get our claws into them. So and I think the federal debt's going to be a big driver. You can't afford anything because the federal debt's too great. Can't afford any kind of public spending, but we can do the military industrial complex. We can subsidize fossil fuels. We can do a variety of corporate purposes. We can bail out the banks, but we can't do anything for ordinary people because the debt's too big. Anyway, we've all heard that before, but I think it's going to get a lot louder.
And
Anyway,
it's all been proven already. The greenbacks, when that was issued into the economy there, it created a cash economy that started, that created some prosperity, but it also started eliminating debt.
yeah, exactly.
And that's why Nate Lincoln was shot.
Okay, so actually we've run past our allotted time here, so.
Yeah, we didn't have anybody come in and tell us to stop.
No, that's true. We didn't. So,
The host is supposed to do that. I suppose I'm supposed to do that.
well, perhaps.
Thank you for keeping track of the time, Rita. Thank you all for coming. And I hope you will, as Mark Twain said, education is not something that schools can give you. It's something you have to do for yourself. And of course, money is not taught in our schools, and therefore we need to study it ourselves to discover how we're being screwed. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate you all.
Mhm.
Thank you. Go
Everybody.
Greens. The
Bye.
Green Party is still the best.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Pretty
Have a
low
good
competition,
night.
mostly though.
All right. Hey, Green.
Hi,
In the
Paul. Thanks for coming.
I was curious. I was just curious about how can I get in contact with anyone here? You know what I'm saying? With any other additional
Oh, Adam, you had asked for, is there anything that you would like us to send to you? I understand that we can send you text messages.
yeah, is there a way of sending some links to some of the different things that's been mentioned in a text message to me?
Yes,
Can
if
you
you can
give
give
us
me
your
your
number?
number where we can text that.
It's
Go to the
it's
website.
801.
Pardon?
It's 801
801
915
915
4003.
4003, and your name
Yep.
is Adam Guyman. Do you?
Guyman, GUIMON.
Right. Okay.
May I suggest go to greens.money. You'll learn a lot there.
Well, Adam's
Well, he-
I'm legally
impaired, so it might be
Um,
so.
he's visually impaired, so he might
Yeah.
have a problem with that.
But we
it's
can
not
fix him up.
always
I'll talk to you as much as you want,
Yeah.
Adam.
all right. Because yeah, like earlier I was that's why I brought up, like when you're disabled and you're on a low fixed income and you're collecting like SSI, SSDI food stamps, you're not allowed to like there are rules that say you're not allowed to save a certain dollar amount, or you're like if you save $2,000 or more, or you can lose different benefits, which obviously that hurts a lot of people. And disability is one of those things that you don't have to be this white to be disabled. You can be black. You could be a part of any other. You know what I'm saying. You could be religious, non-religious, part of the LGBTQI plus community. So the thing is that's why I brought up earlier as well that like I've thought in the past when I was younger, like it would be nice if like our monetary system, like if let's say like for example, like if you're on SSI or SSDI, you if you can't save money, you can't advance while someone else who might have a job to go out and earn money, if you know what I'm saying. Or let's say you get hurt in an accident and let's say you sue, if you like when I was in a UTA bus wreck once, or I mean a light rail wreck once in 2013, I ended up suing, for my damages, but because I had more money than what I was allowed, obviously I got a call from the Department of Workforce Services saying, hey, if you basically have to blow the money you got in your settlement. You have to blow that money and get rid of it, or else you lose your benefits. But if someone who's not disabled and they're not work, they work
Yes,
maybe, and
right. Yep.
they don't have that same, if you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, Adam. I'm a
These are all
lawyer,
the-
and I had clients that had that problem, so, or they
You
would,
know.
I handled the states, and they would be left something by an estate, like their parents were going to leave them a house or
Mhm.
something, and,
Yeah.
These
and that would
all
put 'em over-
distortions of public policy that
yes, put
we
them over
need
the limit for
public
getting any
policy to
government
serve
help,
people.
so.
And so like one of my things is, like, there's like, if let's say a person, had, and this should apply to everyone, no matter who you are, whether you work or you on government assistance. But, to make it fair, there's like, savings. The savings part, like whenever you put money away into your savings, then that should be when the US government's allowed to say, hey, we can print new money. We can,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Because it's not because you're in debt for it, because you can't pay it back. If, when you put money away, then because
Mhm.
nobody saves for things anymore. If you know what I'm saying,
Mhm.
and the thing is, it's like there's like your monthly bills, your cost of living, cost of
Right.
living and is one thing, and then there's savings, and then the other third part of that pie chart would be free spending allowance, and that's things that you want to do above and beyond, you know, if you know what I'm saying. It's like your regular monthly bills, your rent or your house payment, your transportation, things like that. Food, clothing, and things like that. There's a certain, and then you know, like instead of punishing people because they're not what I'm saying. Because a bank should be a place where you should just be able to put your money, not a place where you put your money, but somebody else is,
Right. And that
making
is
it.
part of the reform that we're talking about too. It also fixes that problem with the banks so that the money that you put in the bank is actually your money. It's not their
Mhm.
money
Yeah.
the way it
Yeah.
is now. It's right now, it's an
Hmm.
unsecured loan to the bank. But
Well.
the change that we want to make is what they call abatement, where you or embailment rather, or something like where the money is your money when you put it in the bank and you can get it out anytime you want.
Yeah, and
Would
the
no
thing
longer
is,
create money. They would just be regular banks that lent out deposits that people would put in the bank, wanting the bank to invest it in other things to get some interest
mhm,
for them. The banks would no longer be creating money as debt and interest bearing.
mhm. I mean, the thing is that you like when you play Monopoly, for example, everyone's given a certain minimum amount that everyone has when they're playing the
Right.
game, and then and the same kind of thing in a sense, everyone's like even when someone's born, you know, there's a certain, like the US would be allowed to say, hey, it's when someone's born, there's a certain dollar amount that we have to create because that person is now a part. The thing is when a person passes away, that's a piece of the community that's gone. When a small business goes out of business, like if I go, like if let's say you have a restaurant and I go to your restaurant and I spend a little bit of my money, that's putting money in your pocket. That's part of your income. That's how you then say, hey, when I want to go buy something at Sally's store, you have the money. And that's where I'm talking about having, so when you have a certain dollar amount, a certain percentage of your income goes into savings, if one third of your income was able to go into savings, that's, I'm saying, that's building. And then, but if I can't, for example, if I can't afford to come to your restaurant, then I'm not able to contribute to helping you as a person who is working. Because as I've
That's
grown
right.
up as a kid, I was always taught that, oh, well, you just have to be able to go out and earn money. But not everyone, if you have some people who have disabilities, they can't go out and earn the money. So their whole entire, they can't get ahead anywhere in life, if you know what I'm saying. And so that's just, you know what I'm saying? That's just how I've seen it as a disabled person my whole life.
Yeah.
And so, and it's just like, there has to be a balance, obviously, and usually when someone's a multi-billionaire, they are paying less taxes versus, you know, and it's just really, I know it's really screwed up that, you know, how it's set up now, because it just hurts people.
This is true. I'm going
Like
to end the recording now.
I
That's
believe
okay.
money's a form. I believe money's a form of slavery. Unfortunately, if you know what I'm saying.
That's
Yeah.
what debt is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
debt. That's
Yes.
right.